Hello and welcome to the episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Don, very quickly, we know from internal numbers, and this is just a general cool point, like when we partnered with Woo, they had quite a different business model as far as having like a single dominant market maker, and it was more of a payment for order flow type exchange. Whereas as far as I know now, over 90% of the volume traded has come from external/designated market makers. And I just think in such a short time, that's such an awesome transformation from this like niche centralized sources of liquidity type of venue to just like a full-fledged exchange with some of the best known market makers in the space. And most of that work being done during the bear market. Obviously, we had some fraction to do with it, but not going to pat ourselves too much. I just think it's a really cool transition. And yeah, I think that's worth sort of publicly pointing out and celebrating. If someone's been reluctant to use the exchange from a risk management point of view or didn't like the centralized liquidity, we've said in the past it's a very reasonable position. But I think in its current state and just looking at the trajectory for Woo, it's been pretty just nice to see, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would attribute all the good things that Woo to us.
Correct.
And everything that goes poorly, obviously not our fault.
It's actually them actively not listening to us when things go poorly.
Exactly.
Because we have the foresight to see it coming, we tell them, and sometimes they just don't listen, but hopefully they'll learn.
Yeah, but at least they listen most of the time, just looking at their recent track records.
Exactly. And the way they listen to us is people using our ref link that's in the description, right? That's like the only way.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. Like, that's how you do it.
That's why this show exists. It's really the ref link, talking to each other for like 2 hours.
It's a funnel. It's a funnel, is what the marketing people call it.
Correct. Our friendship is just one big funnel for a shared ref link, and we're just playing. There's some sort of game theory trade-offs to who's going to run away with the ref link money, and we're at this weirdly stable equilibrium. But if my greed might spike, that's it. It's over. The show's done, and I run away with the ref link proceeds.
I'll run away with it first.
Okay, then I'll just dump 10 pre-sales on your head. This is how true friends are made in crypto.
Oh, this is how generally crypto is played, and I think we've been playing it wrong.
We have, but that changes now. There's this new token. Gosh, wouldn't that be crazy? I don't even know at this point. I think at this point, my sort of personality and expectations are so cemented that if I started doing these random token shills, people would genuinely assume I'd hacked. I was hacked. I could probably make like a full-on doxing video with me and people would think it's deep faked. It's just, I don't even know how I would do it. Like if you had to do a token shill, like a proper one of those shitty, unknown sort of lockup influencer ones, would you even know how to phrase that? If I had to do it, like if there was a gun to my head, that's a weird one, right? Gun to my head to give me money. I'd probably say something like, you have to be super cynical about it. Like, hello, I am promoting this project because I expect the number to go up, in which case I will then dump my open sort of unlocked proceeds and make money. This is a very cynical transaction, but please participate for the sake of my financial well-being. I expect this project has no future, but I expect to also extract some money from it. Brackets at your expense. Thank you, cred.
I like it. I would kind of go in a different way. I would be like, so I've been paid by this project to shield them. They apparently have enough money to make it worthwhile for me to do so. So maybe they have enough money to pump this shit.
Jesus.
And then you see if anyone buys it.
That's amazing.
So that's my strategy. So if you ever see me tweet something, because I think the price has to be quite high, because at this point, and I mean, this is no exaggeration, we've kind of passed up on at least 7, if not 8 figures of promotion money.
Lifetime in crypto, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Almost certainly.
So I mean, it would have to be a big sum, and even then I wouldn't necessarily do it. Like, you shouldn't be expecting this to come from me, but if it did, it would have to be a ginormous sum. And if someone has enough money for that, I mean, maybe they will actually make the price go up. Who the fuck knows?
So everyone has a price, including you, Don.
Nah, I like legit don't think.
Maybe the guilt trip angle is a good one. It's like, guys, please understand, I've come across hard times. The monthly time frame just hasn't been working. I've been sick, but also I'll give this money to charity because charity is so expensive. And Jesus definitely didn't say to give your alms in private or whatever the quote is. So please help yourself by helping me type of thing.
Yeah, charity is in my pocket. Huh?
Yes. I sometimes feel very upset about having a really good memory, because I'll just be browsing the feed and I'll see some dude like posting charts or doing whatever, and then my mind will go back to like 6 months to 2 years, being like, wait, didn't you just completely pump and dump this project and made it your whole personality for like 1 week to 2 months, and now it's at zero and you presumably made 5-6 figures from it, and like no one cares, you know? It makes it a very cynical place to scroll. Also, this is a great time for a tangent because we only have 1 hour, and having spent the first 10 minutes talking about absolutely fucking nothing, I can't wait for the episode starts at whatever timer, you know? Like, I never understand people who are super obsessed with the TA portion of this, because you can just read the newsletter for that, and it's better than this show as far as TA goes. This is for...
You don't have to listen to us.
Exactly, you don't even have to listen to us. This is for like just chatting shit and catching up, and maybe some pearls of wisdom completely accidentally fall out, and it's the back and forth. If you're just here to see like the monthly time frame, like you can probably do a better job of that yourselves at this point if you're a frequent watcher of the show. But nonetheless, we appreciate you for whatever reason that you're here. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 60k. Nothing magical happens at 60k, it'd just be quite nice. Round number confluence. And that's not the only thing that's going to 60k. Hey Don, you got, you looking at this breakout?
That is a transition.
You're fucking welcome.
Wow.
I do get paid now for
impressed.
this shit. Actually, I do. I'm massively overpaid for this show. Let's be real. Nonetheless, the monthly time frame, the close was like slightly dodgy. I saw people call this like an exhaustion candle or like a topping candle. Dude, I don't know what the fuck that either of those things are.
On crack. I mean, like you have 100 candles that go straight to the moon, and then you have a candle that doesn't move at all, and people are like, oh yeah, that's it. That's the one that takes us to zero. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't understand. Like, just because the candle doesn't move doesn't mean it has to be like, you know, like it's not like that's an exhaustion candle or like whatever the fuck you want to call it. It's just this consolidation, if anything.
Right. It reminds me a lot of people who just use accumulation and distribution really liberally, whereas those things don't tend to work so well in real time. It's like, oh, that was distribution. It's usually hindsight commentary, right? When it comes to people using those terms. Yeah. And I feel the same when it comes to a lot of candlestick analysis. Nonetheless, what do you think of the monthly? I know you're a big sort of 60K, 30K guy, and you've gone back and forth as to whether there's a relevant midpoint around 44, 47, whatever that monthly cluster is. Do you think there's anything here, or is the fact that we're pushed up against it more likely not just a breakout signal on the monthly, or a continuation signal at least?
Yeah, I mean, there is something. I just don't think it's... I mean, it has been capping price, right? Like if you go on the lower time frames, that's kind of where we were stuck, like in that 44, 45K region. But also, I mean, we've tested it now, like last month. We're testing it right now this month. I think the more we test it, the less significant it's becoming. So I don't think it's necessarily going to change where the market is gonna go. So I don't necessarily care about it too much. But there's a level there. I don't hate it. If you close below it this month, maybe we pull back next month or chop some more. But just from like a signal to noise kind of perspective, I think it's not the greatest level anymore. It was okay. I don't think it's too important now.
At least did its job partially, right? In slowing things down. Like the month of consolidation that we had, that was last month, kind of happened around that level. But I think in general, I don't know if you agree with me on this, I think the best use of the monthly time frame is to buy large, scary dips that you then hold for more months, basically. And I've fumbled that on several occasions of kind of treating the monthly levels as good technical trading levels and then over managing them on the weekly and daily timeframes. And I think that was kind of a lack of practice to some extent, because it'd been a while since I took monthly swing longs. And so when I was buying 19, 20K first time round, I immediately jumped then. You know, most people jump to like the 1 minute. I was jumping to the daily, and that was still too fast. And I think if you sort of take that view of the monthly time frame, i.e. its best use is to get really sort of discounted entries that you then hold for months, would you agree that it's kind of been lockout for a while now? Like the last one that I can think of that actually met that criterion was the 20K dip. And that was all the USDC stuff and all sorts of things happening around the same time. But that
was intra-month too.
That was intra-month. Yeah, that wasn't even like here's a candle body retesting this thing, right? It was just like you can see it now, it's just a wick. But to me, as far as using the monthly time frame in that way of getting those dips into monthly levels, that's the most recent example we have. All the other examples are either sort of monthly breakouts, monthly reclaim type of things, but they're not as clean. And even the 20K one isn't particularly clean either. So if you're looking at this on the monthly time frame, you've kind of been deprived of the best setup of this time frame, which is the dip buys. Do you agree with that? Or do you think the monthly breakout / reclaim signals are equally good, if not better?
No, I agree. It's been tough for the monthly enjoyers if they've not been like, let's say you were like bullish because we kind of reclaimed the July candle of 2022. That in itself is quite the aggressive signal, I think, like that reclaim. That you could have just been bullish from that point onwards, and then you have an entry, but holding those over like I mean, that's like a year now. That's quite tough. I didn't do it. I could have, should have probably, but I didn't. So yeah, I do agree with you. It's kind of been lockout-ish, and I think that could easily continue if this rallies towards 60K, which it very well could, right? Just given the trend and the strength and just the momentum that it has. Then there hasn't really been a good dip buying opportunity ever since. Like there was a reclaim opportunity, and I mean there was lower time frame action that you got at 16K, but otherwise like nothing really on the monthly time frame. But I think that's okay, right? Like on the monthly time frame, you get like a signal every 1, 2, 3 years, and then you have to take it no matter what, unless you think the market goes to zero, and then you usually make a shitload of money. And you can see this in like in Bitcoin's history, basically all the way back towards like very, very early days. So it's okay if it doesn't give entries all the time, as long as those entries stay as good as they have been, and they have been excellent. So that's fine.
I think that's a good summary. I think the weekly time frame is probably gearing up to be the best looking one out of the usual high time frame trio, right?
Yeah.
We had about 8 weeks of consolidation. Somehow, the entire time we spent on a weekly closing basis inside the pre and then post ETF range, which is crazy, isn't it?
Insane. Yeah.
Because there's all this speculation that was, oh, well, the ETFs are just going to be the conduit to all this new capital that was previously locked out. And then there was the ETF is going to be the sell the news, and just Grayscale is going to be the hammer, that, you know, the nail that really kills it, and so on and so forth. I completely butchered that analogy, but whatever, we roll with it. What is the correct idiom there? Is the hammer, is Grayscale is going to be the fucking what?
I mean, isn't it the final nail in the coffin?
Yes. There we go. The final nail in the coffin. For some reason,
I cannot believe I got this.
Listen, I don't speak England very well. Okay, I'm from. I'm from
this might be the first time. This is the first time.
For some reason, I was trying to mix deathbed and then death knell came to mind. I don't even know what death knell means. Whatever. My brain has clearly got this like. My brain trades more than I do, because it's been long COVID for like a year now.
Oh yeah, very, very long.
Anyway,
big
dude, fuck off. Isn't that obvious? Jesus. Dude, I had this turbo COVID thing for basically all of January, and the only thing I'm like shivering, I'm getting full body spasms, headaches, chills. I'm like sweating out the entire night and feeling worse the next morning, just like terrible across the board. And the only thing that I could think of the whole time, aside from why am I lonely and there's no one to look out for me, how have I built my life that I could just die and no one would notice? When that thought went away, the only thing I could think of is this priced in? Like, I'm just thinking, if I were like an obese grandmother, dude, I would be fucking dead in 2 days maximum, you know? I'm like a reasonably fit, reasonably young man, and I'm there fucking shaking, full body spasming, hoping someone puts me out of my misery. And so immediately the trader brain turns on, and I'm thinking, well, if this is a real thing, how viral, infectious is it? Is it priced in? Should I start selling Nvidia at all-time highs? Like, all this other dumb shit. Nonetheless, we somehow stayed within that range for 8 weeks, while both narratives kind of played tug-of-war, right? Like, oh, GBTC versus all these new inflows, and then GBTC is going to stop selling, so on and so forth. And that has seemingly resolved to the upside, right? Like, obviously 2 days left until the weekly close, but at the moment, just looking at the chart, that looks like a breakout from an 8-week long consolidation. And if that is the case, then that's pretty fucking good, right? Like, we essentially wrote the same in the newsletter, TLS.com, that look, we had all this really aggressive selling, and we know a lot of that was from GBTC. We know specifically a lot of that was from the FTX estate getting rid of their GBTC, kind of fire sale as aggressively as they can. And then that was absorbed without a range breakdown, which is super impressive. And now we have what looks like a range breakout with ETF inflows still continuing. That's not a fucking terrible look, right? Both technically and narratively. 8-week consolidation that didn't make new lows with all the aggressive selling into a technical breakout. I mean, what more do you want, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you were bull tweeting this morning. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I've been bull tweeting for a while now. I'm just not trading, which I'm gonna be upset about if this continues to go higher. Like it's a bad combination being right about the market but not being in it. But yeah, I think,
I wouldn't know what that's like.
No, but I think it just looks good, right? You look at the weekly time frame. I like these kind of like the fact that we went sideways after all of this ETF stuff is just insane to me. Just conceptually, like thinking about it, right? Because we got noticed that we're gonna get an ETF in, I think, June of 23, right? And then we had all this time to kind of buy this shit, to sell it to people much, much higher, right? And I know that a lot of people did this. Like, I mean, you buy 25, 26K because, I mean, ETF is quite obviously gonna give you the opportunity to sell higher, right? So you buy a bunch more than you actually wanted. And this, I think a lot of people did, including myself. And then it just went up and basically doubled from there. And we got the ETF, and there was barely any movement to the downside from all of these people unloading, right? Which is kind of crazy to me because I was thinking that the ETF was going to be like, I was expecting the GBTC selling if we get it. And I was expecting a bunch of news people, like news traders basically selling. And I was expecting kind of the hype to go away quite quickly just based on that. Like, because there's just so much coins that people bought up that they now can sell, but none of that happened, right? Like, I mean, we got all of that. Everyone like did what they wanted to, but the price action just was very, very constructive, just went sideways. And something that we've been talking about on the show, like the most bullish outcome for the ETF, in my eyes, was always going to be like a period of sideways trading, because that would allow the market to kind of digest all of that. All of those people unloading the free money that they basically got. It's like with an airdrop in crypto, right? Like you get an airdrop and then like a bunch of people get their airdrop. And if all of that selling is absorbed, like, I mean, and it's probably going to go much higher, right? And right now, that's kind of how it looks like. You had a bunch of people get free money, took advantage of the market, offloaded it, and the market didn't care. And that is, to me, quite bullish and quite positive development. And I mean, yeah, it can still pull back, obviously. And I mean, it can also go higher and then pull back to like still like low 40s. But all in all, just the fact that we are cementing this whole like price action above 40K as not just like, okay, this was just because of the news, but we're cementing it as kind of like something legit is quite impressive to me. This is going to be a nice space in general. Like if it pulls back, like we have 8 weeks of consolidation in the middle of this trend. That's quite nice. So like as long as this holds and as long as it kind of sticks above 42K ish, this is quite bullish to me overall.
Yeah, I think that's pretty balanced. And also, we sort of wrote about this when the GBTC stuff started initially. I think certainly in Technical Roundup, the newsletter, but also on the show, made the argument that, hey, these ETFs are actually doing really well. They're just currently but they're sort of by their nature more passive and slower products, whereas the GBTC fire sale is very fast, aggressive. So that definitely like muddies the waters as far as the price impact from the demand for these ETFs. So once the aggressive sellers get out of the way, the market can actually, not to use the cliche term, but I'm going to use it, show its hand, right? And that's, I think, sort of what we've seen to a reasonably accurate degree. The market got really sold into and was just pretty bearish with this GBTC overhang. But as soon as, not even there are still GBTC outflows. It's not like we're completely done with it. But as soon as you got the big aggressive chunk out of the way, the market can kind of breathe a little, and the demand that was coming for the other ETFs, kind of real demand, if you will, could show up on the chart, for lack of a better term. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's also quite quick, right? Like, I mean, because the whole ETF shtick is that this takes a while to take off, right? Like, I mean, it has to kind of establish itself, and then you're gonna see it being recommended to the boomers, to whoever. But we've just seen consistent good flows on that front from the beginning, which I find quite impressive. So
let's talk about two things, both extremes. One is, we may be arguing that the weekly chart is probably the best looking one. I don't think the daily is bad at all. It's just kind of a faster version of the weekly, right?
Yeah.
So let's first talk about what would make this go terribly wrong. Chris Benisk was right. He is our god again. What kind of candles would cause that to become true? Would it be enough to fail back inside the weekly range high, sort of sub 44K? Or would you need to see a breakdown below 41K to be like, oh, okay, we kind of just head faked a massive consolidation break. That's pretty bad. What would make this good looking weekly chart not just neutral, but like, oh, yikes, okay, never mind, spoke too early?
I think anything below the open of this current weekly candle is... Like, if we close anywhere there, or like, I mean, even a wick would honestly be quite bad, I think. But if it's a wick based on like some bullshit news or whatever, it's okay. But if we're starting to lose this on a consistent basis, like which is like 42.6 ish, I think it starts looking quite bad quite fast. And that is something that I very often do when you get these kind of breakout candles, right? I'm just like, okay, this is a breakout and I'm going to trust it. But as soon as this thing turns back around, all bets are off. And if you look like in the past of Bitcoin, of Bitcoin's price action, is something that you see very often, like the trend setting moves. You just never, like, you get a big breakout candle and you just never go below that breakout candle again, or like very rarely.
I mean, 32K is a great example of that, right? That weekly break through the weekly range low, it didn't even come close.
Yes, and this is the stuff that you want to see. Obviously, sometimes it happens, but that is more often than not like something that you can kind of anticipate anyway. So like for me, looking at this thing, if this kind of retraces it, I'll be on Team Bear temporarily. I generally think this whole, like this, how this has all played out is quite bullish generally for the market. So any bearishness that I can see in the next, I don't know, like year or two, I think is gonna be temporary. I think it's quite the bullish environment that we're in, and even if this pulls back, this is like you need to thank God for getting the pullback instead of trying to short before the pullback comes, in my opinion. So like, even if this turns to shit, I think you rather want to be on the bull side than on the bear side.
Also, the good thing is we're making a lot of space between where we are now and like 30K, because I still think 30K from a monthly, weekly, structural, psychological, whatever adjective you want to use perspective is super fucking important for like macro trend, risk appetite, all that shit. It's like, it's a really important Boeing level. And so if we make a lot of progress past 30K, that means even if we have large corrections in percentage terms, structurally we can still kind of absorb them, and you can still justify rationally being bullish as long as we don't lose that, you know? I'd much rather have a dip from like 60 to 40, or even from like 40 to mid 30s, rather than make fuck all progress above 30 and then a dip takes us all the way to the inflection point, you know? And at that point, yes, your risk reward is also best, but it's more of a why the fuck are we back here type of thing at that stage. So it comes back to the point you made about like building a base and sort of carving out price action above the danger levels and away from the danger levels, ideally. I think we're doing a fairly decent job of that for the time being.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're so far away from 32K now, which makes it a really nice, like, if everything goes to shit, and this is just something that happens in crypto from time to time, right? Yes. Like, everything goes to shit
too often.
and I mean, this is like 32K is a 30% pullback, right? So I don't think it's out of the question that you go there, but if you go there, I mean, that's just such an obvious buy, right? And like you said, the further away we move from it, the better of a buy it is. And
yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But I think that's right. Like if if it goes to like 35 and then starts straight nuking to 32 straight away, it might be like, oh fuck, like here we go.
The chances of sign of weakness.
Yeah, I think so too. The chances of that being a failed breakout are much higher. Whereas if you really clear 30 and then end up nuking down there, that's contextually a much better 30k buy than a weak, strong breakout nuke to 30k. I think is a better trade. And buying that level is a better trade than weak breakout and then sort of immediately retrace the 30k. It's like the same price, but contextually, it's really quite a different trade. And I think that's a really good example of when we talk about context and not just price, as to how to maybe, just one example of thinking in those terms. The other thing I wanted to ask, so we've done the bear tarding. Basically, if this breakout gets stuffed, momentum fails, I think in the short to medium term, you can kind of be like, okay, that was a bit premature, right?
Yeah.
As far as targets for this breakout, that's an interesting one. On Monday markets, the only other level aside from the highs that I felt comfortable positing was this weird weekly level at 52k.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that or if you think it's relevant, but I was just kind of looking for something in between, sort of, if it's not going to go in a straight line to all-time highs, a potential trouble area or something to short-term trade. Kind of 50, 52k made sense to me from just a purely chart perspective. I don't know if you have anything before the range high, close to 60.
60k all the way, baby.
60k all the way. There we go. You heard it here first.
But just while listening to you, I was like, how the fuck? Like, it's so crazy that we're like talking back like about all-time high again.
Mate, it's mental.
Just a year ago, we
were racing hamsters.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and almost everyone was like, this space is so fucked for so long now, just based on what happened. And now we're basically back, like 45, 47k, right? Like that's a really like that's very close to the best prices we've seen ever. Like we didn't spend much time above like 50k in Bitcoin's history, and now we're back, even though we had one of the worst years in its history. Quite fucking wild to me. Like that
it's insane.
Everything blew up and we're back, baby.
Thank you, BlackRock.
Yeah, I mean, that's just nuts. Like, that's completely crazy.
Part of it, at least. I also never, the narrative was literally, and again, if you're viewing this in the future, maybe you weren't here for what it was like at the lows, the prevailing narrative was we won't have another cycle, and if we do, it'll look completely different, Yeah. And that was just, that couldn't be more wrong.
Dude, I cannot, like, do you remember the reply? Like, I posted 16k, I posted trade idea with like entry 16k, stop loss was 0 just for the fun of it, and target was 100k, and the entirety of the replies was like, I mean, why the fuck would it go to 100k, right? And now that we're trading at 50, I think people are actually gonna be like, I mean, 100k isn't too unreasonable, which is quite funny. Like, it's so crazy how quickly things change, and
that's what makes the trading good.
Yeah, I love it, but it's still mind blowing to me. Like, these prices are good, which I didn't think I would say.
This was very quick.
Quite a while.
This is very quick. I had to shift bias quite quickly because you'll recall on this show, at least, my argument was, well, yeah, I could see 35, 37, whatever, but like the amount of time we spent up there, we had so much credit expansion and so much fraud at the same time, and we had such facilitative macro and all this other shit. It's pretty hard to imagine that we get there so quickly in kind of a straight line. So naturally what we did was get there quickly in a straight line. So that was quite fun. But, yes, go on.
Not really. Like, that's not really. I think like just things changed with BlackRock and like with the ETFs coming in.
Yes. Just
straight up, I think like if that didn't happen, I think we would have spent quite a bit more time in the 20s. And the 25, 26k bottom that we had, I think wouldn't have held, and we would have just kind of like went sideways for whatever. Agreed. 6 months, a year, whatever.
Like a longer time-based capitulation type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they say, Don? If my auntie had wheels, she'd be a bike.
Yeah. I mean, you never know, obviously. But I think the market would have looked quite different. And yeah.
I prefer this version.
Me too.
So are you a fan of 52k? You said 60k or nothing, right?
Yeah, I think 60k is the level. If this breakout, I mean, this breakout could wick towards 52 and then maybe get rejected there. So I'm not saying like that's not a level that no one should watch. I'm just saying, like, for me, like the more important levels, like 60K, 30K, and then we're somewhere in the middle, but with bullish bias.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, those levels make sense. If it goes straight to your higher target at 60, this would be one of the most insane weekly lockout trends that we've seen in a while, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you think about it, we had this really painful range, and volatility towards the end of it was absolutely shocking, like between 30 and 25 with that dodgy looking double bottom, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as we broke out of that, it's basically been zero pullbacks. If we just look at the weekly candles, we had the 30K breakout candle that took us to 34. Then we had a month of this grindy diagonal sideways consolidation, right? Then we broke out for another 2 weeks, went higher. Then we had an 8-week consolidation sideways, and now we're breaking out again.
Yeah, no moves down at all.
Zero, like fuck all. Like on the monthly time frame, nothing. Just sort of straight smashing from the consolidation at 30 initially, then through 35, continuation higher. On the weekly, same thing. As soon as you get that breakout signal, just baits you with this diagonal grind, and then just breaks higher. And there's just been no consecutive down weeks, pretty much. I think that's actually an accurate statement. Just looking at the only time we had consecutive down weeks was like on ETF, and even that was, those 2 down weeks that we had didn't even break market structure, right? They just traded towards the weekly range low. So you've had no break in market structure since 1962. And the last time we had 2 consecutive down weeks was the whole ETF thing. And even that only just pretty much hit support and then went back up. That is insane, If there's ever a time to have a trading system that doesn't fully require these macro mega pullbacks if you want to participate, this trend is a great example of it. And I kind of wrote about this to some extent in that tweet thread that I made about how to adjust the trending conditions. I think one of the core points in that was that consolidations are a form of pullback. And sometimes that's all you'll get. That's enough. And I think this market tells that story pretty fucking convincingly for the time being. But hey, maybe we've cursed it now, Don, so we'll see. Any other BTC thoughts? Are there triggers that you're watching for? Anything in the altcoin world that could make you panic, ETF wise, news wise, or is it just, hey, this breakout, I'm going to trust it until it gets stuffed, otherwise go fuck yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I had the trigger at on the daily time from just closing above 44, and we did, and then ever since then, basically, it's been 2 days, 10% almost, not quite, but like 6, 7, 8. Yeah. That just looks good. And if that on the daily time frame fails, obviously like the weekly time frame will look much worse, and then you can start being bear targeted at that point, I think. But we haven't really seen any reason to be worried yet. Just looking at the chart, right? Like look at the daily chart. This is insane. You had like a fake out below 41K, which is quite a nice kind of signal in itself, right? Like we had a range between 41 and 44. We fake broke below, retested 38K, and then just came back up. And ever since we came back up, that the market's just been up only basically. And in my opinion, it just makes sense to kind of assume this is real until it's not. And it wouldn't be if it starts coming back below 44. And then you can make the argument that, this is all bearish, this is distribution. Something I've seen a lot on Twitter. People are like, oh, yeah, this is distribution. I think Capo, our man, is also in that camp. Respectfully calling for this being a distribution. And I think, like, it very well could be.
But he called for this bounce, didn't he? Didn't he catch this leg higher?
Yeah.
I don't know about catch. That's a weird verb to use.
Yeah, but he did call for like a new high.
Yeah, legend.
Before new lows.
Some fucking respect on my man's name. Respectfully.
Yeah. Respectfully. But I think in general, like if you want to be like bearish this, I think you like, at least for me, I would need to see some evidence of weakness first. Everything we've been seeing, from the price action to the reaction to news to the reaction to flows that we've actually been seeing, right? Everything's been bullish.
Top.
Yeah, could very well be,
it reminds me
right?
of this like Ichimoku shit where it's like, oh, well, you wait for this to be above this, and then this crosses this, and then when it's all bullish confirmation, that's when you enter. It's like, no, you can't. That's the end of the trend. Like,
I mean, I'm not saying you should be entering right now.
No, I know, of course.
But like in general, like I want to see at least a little bit of weakness somewhere before I'm ready to call tops on this thing. And I think there's much more room to the upside than there is to the downside, even at these prices. Unless you're expecting the S&P to just giga nuke, which fair enough. I think that is a very popular stance to have right now. And I mean, I kind of get it, but for me, I just want to see weakness before I'm gonna call any of that bearish.
Listen, bro, no news cycle, and Europe is gonna freeze in the winter, literally freeze.
Oh yeah, isn't the winter like almost over?
Yes, it's coming soon. Don't worry.
Oh shit!
Don't get complacent at the end now, Don. I think that's pretty much enough for BTC. Hopefully,
yes.
Let's talk about your favorite chart, ETHBTC, with an especially good hourly candle.
Dude, this is so depressing.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know what time. I don't think there's any good time frame for this thing. But it just doesn't exist. I think there was some semblance of hope that the ETF would be the rotation moment. We kind of wrote about that and discussed it, but we've essentially retraced almost the entirety of that candle at this point. And thus far, that rotation hasn't materialized. It seems like, at least to some extent, the ETH rotation basically leapfrogged ETH. We also wrote about this in trletter.com, and just jumped straight to like restaking Ponzi's, layer 2s, ETH beta, other layer 1s, etc. And like ETH itself just missed out. And that's been kind of the recurring theme throughout crypto market strength, is that it's kind of neither here nor there, right? It's trapped in this, what you call the midwit purgatory, where the obvious trade is in BTC, and then everyone else goes out on the tails with like the layer 1s and meme coins, etc. And if you're ETH, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and that's just been the theme. And people keep making excuses for this thing. You know, if this were any other chart, we would not speak about it with this type of frequency, right? It would just be wholly uninteresting. It'd be like, yeah, mate, this has just gone down for a year and still looks like shit. Let's go to the next thing. But because it's ETH relative to BTC, it sort of commands a different type of attention. I also saw someone argue that ETHBTC is a kind of a dated proxy, because if you want to get a sense of ETH in general against BTC, it should include like the layer 2s and all this restaking Ponzi type shit. And I kind of get that argument, but I'm still not ready to get rid of ETHBTC entirely, right? And as far as this thing goes on its own terms, I think it's just been weak, and there's not a whole lot else to say about it. Again, the only attempt at a saving grace was the ETF week, when that was like a very forced, almost like a brute force rotation type of buying, right? And the market just was not having it. And, you know, it lasted 1 week above that level with like the tiniest red candle, and then the very next week it was back below, and it's just back at the lows pretty much. To me, this still looks like a high time frame breakdown. I don't know. I quite like the argument that you made on previous Casual Fridays that, hey, especially following the failed breakout attempt at the range low, this 055, 057 shit, you might as well kind of move your requirements higher in terms of what would constitute bullishness for this thing, and look towards 065, maybe even 07, right? If you want to be conservative about it. Like this thing, you know, the burden of proof is really on this thing now to prove that it's not a piece of shit. It's not a piece of shit, and it has not been satisfying that burden whatsoever. And even if you bought like the Pico Schmico bottom every single time, it's just been miserable. You know, even the ranging and the rotations that it's had from the lows have basically underperformed just about everything. And it's not nice that the market has to pay this penalty of like collective sin whenever ETH goes up. Like everything else has to then, you know, suffer 1 to whatever days of dogshit price action. So I don't know. I think this thing needs to just do a lot more to be interesting. We discussed in the past how an extreme outcome would be really nice. Either just moon it relentlessly for weeks, or just fucking rip off the band-aid and nuke it to like, what, 04? And then we could be like, okay, thank God we've got like something here, because otherwise the alternative is what we've been having, which is just downtrend, bleed, failed breakout, bleed, and just hugging the lows over and over again.
Bearish chop is what we've been having.
Bearish chop.
Very bad. No, like every time I look at this, I'm like trying to look for like bullish setups, just because that's just what it feels like you should be doing on ETH, right? That's kind of what everyone in the market has been doing. It feels like to me, and I'm glad I haven't taken any of them, right? Because this is just terrible. Like you said, it's fucking terrible. And I think, my kind of criteria for getting into ETH right now, like I could see myself be interested or bullish ETHBTC above 0.062. I think that's kind of like the earliest make a new high for the first time in ages, like a new significant high. That'd be a good first thing, like a first indication that this is actually bullish, and a first indication would be more than enough for me. But otherwise, like every single bullish setup that you could draw up has been just disappointing. And this week, like started off quite nice and has been just underperforming again. Generally, altcoins haven't been doing too well, to be fair, in like the last 2-3 days. But still, like I still don't think that kind of excuses this kind of price action. That doesn't excuse kind of holding ETH and making much less money than the people holding Bitcoin. But I do like the narrative that is kind of shaping up, and I do like where, like, if ETH dumps, like if ETH goes to 0.04, for example, there's so much room to go like up again, because right now, like the ETH flipping is scarily close still, even though it's down quite a bit. But if it goes to 0.04 or even like 0.03, there is so much room just to go back to previous highs and then towards like the flipping, because I think that's at some point down the line, if nothing crazy happens, like that's basically the end goal and target, where you swap your ETH all the way back to Bitcoin and never touch ETH again, if that should ever happen.
Or to USD and never touch crypto again.
Oh yeah. But what's happening right now, if this keeps being weak, like something that can happen, and I mean, this crypto wouldn't be the first time, is that just ETH falls out of favor, and then people just use other coins, and ETH kind of loses the status it has. And I think that's also very possible, right? Like I see a bunch of people being like, hey, this, like ETH has to turn around, ETH has to make new highs against Bitcoin. I don't necessarily think it has to. Like there's a lot of layer ones out there now. And ETH doesn't have to be the one that wins. I think that's much more competition than anything like anything else is with Bitcoin, right? Like I don't think Bitcoin has any competition really for what it does. ETH does, and so like there's more risk in that, and that's why I think you want to be quite certain of where it's gonna go before you actually take like high time frame positions in this thing. And for me, that's 0.062 or a massive giga dump. I like to be entertained by setups along the way and be like, hey, and there's something that I talked about on Wednesday, like the current area where it's trading in right now, that's technically weekly support. Like you can make a box on the 25th of December candle. That's what we're trading in right now. Like if you want to bet on a higher low on this thing, like that's pretty much the only area where you can do so. But also, like, I don't know, it seems so much easier to just trade Bitcoin, right? To me anyway. Like this seems to be designed to take your money away, and therefore I mean, the Bitcoin trade just seems more simple.
I think it's designed to lock up your money, right? Like that's what also, oddly enough, probably one of the stronger counter arguments or arguments in ETH's favor is that it's still an absolute TVL black hole, right?
Oh yeah.
Either just through restaking protocols and the like, and all these yield aggregation protocols, but certainly on the restaking stuff, that's hot. Like if you look at the amount of money locked up in Eigenlayer and Blast alone, that's like a colossal amount. And the valuations and TVLs, again, not perfect on some of these layer 2s. There's still obviously a lot of interest and a lot going on, but we come back to the classic crypto problem of it doesn't seem to be helping the underlying token price all that much or having the intended effect. If anything, sometimes these lock up unlock events can turn into supply depending on the market conditions, especially if you locked at like a much worse price and you get it unlocked at a much higher price. Obviously some people will be like, oh well, cool, the entire crypto ecosystem is healthier, so and this yield is kind of worth more notionally in USD terms. That's fine, but for others they'll just want the free win, and thank God that the protocol made them steel hand and then just fuck off. Do you have ETH USD views that are interesting, or is it all like, listen, this is going to get dragged up by BTC and be weaker if it gets dragged up, and if the market dumps, it's going to dump more, and it's just not, this isn't like an independent mind. It's more parasitic, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at ETH USD weekly, and I think if it crosses above 2.5, 2.55, whatever. I think there is a world in which ETH starts squeezing even on the Bitcoin pair, right?
Nice.
And this is why there's only like this current support that we have on the ETHBTC pair is the only one that's really interesting, because it kind of fits nicely together. Like if ETHBTC, if ETHUSD can break out, it might force ETHBTC to do the same, or to hold the support. That's why I think the ETHBTC support play, whatever, is not the worst in the world, just based on how it's set up. Like, as in, like, ETH could break an important level on the USD pair, and then kind of it all rotates. Like you basically get a bigger squeeze, and then you get some ETHBTC strength. But I still think that's quite a risky trade to take. It's the first, or like one of the first, that you can realistically take. I think the first good trade on ETHBTC was right before the rotation, right? I mean, if you bought the Pico bottom, congrats. I think this is the second one, but it's a very, very aggressive trade. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be worthwhile. Generally speaking, it is being dragged very, very heavily by Bitcoin. So
what's on the other side of a 2500 breakout?
I mean,
is it
3.5?
3.5?
Yeah, 3.5-ish, which is quite a bit. Like, that's quite the move. That would basically be like a 40% move.
There's a lot of space there, mate.
Yeah, and 40% of move on ETHUSD towards resistance. And you have 27% on Bitcoin towards resistance, right? So you could argue that, like, if that breakout happens, maybe you actually have a little bit more potential on
this
the
is some
ETHUSD
boy maths.
side.
I love it.
Yeah, but like, it's a tough one, and it's a risky one. But I think it's not the worst trade in the world. It's just I don't think, even if I wasn't on tradecation, I don't think I would take it. But I think it's at least an interesting one to kind of like play around with.
It's the most plausible out of a list of bad ideas.
Oh yeah, basically, yes.
Speaking of your tradecation, when are you coming out of the tradecation? Not
I mean, right now, basically, I mean, so like, my original plan was end of Q1, right?
Completely arbitrary and made up, right?
No, it's because I have a bunch of real life shit to take care of.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I
said. No, because we moved, and we need to find new doctors. We need to find, like, move in properly, have a bunch of shit basically done.
I still can't believe you're in Bolivia now.
Yeah, it's quite nice. Nah, but there's a lot of things to do, and I don't want to necessarily just have my mind on the trade side of things all the time. Like,
right.
That was last year, like pretty much being in tune with the market 24/7. It's been really, really nice to just kind of like I check the market once a day right now.
Same.
And then I'm like, I look at Bitcoin, I'm like, oh shit, it's up another 2K, and like that's it. And then I can just kind of turn it off again, do something else. So it's been really nice. It's kind of felt like a detox of sorts.
Right.
Like, I mean, because like
you get sucked into the addiction side of things pretty quickly. It feels like.
Yes.
Not the addiction in terms of like over trading, but in terms of like your focus and bandwidth and mental allocation. It seems you go from like 0 to 30 to 40, and you hang around there for a bit, and then you blink and you're at 100 for like 6 months.
It's insane.
As your psychologist and co-host.
Yes, and then you're kind of like, it's not life anymore, you know. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, we're making, like, we're playing the market to make money, and you want to make money to be able to do whatever the fuck you want to do in your life, right? So like, that's kind of like how it goes, the thought process goes. But I think a lot of people are just kind of like leaving that last part out, and then just like get stuck in this, oh, I need to make more and more and more and more money. And then I'm like, yeah, but what the fuck are you going to do with it? You know, like if you continue doing that for 20, 30, 40 years, then your life just passes you by. And what the fuck does the money actually do for you? So
for me, you, buddy.
No, for me, it's just kind of like, and I think this is something that is going to be a constant in the next few years. Like for example, like I was like, in the last, like, I don't know, in the last 3-4 years, I was like, I'm kind of sick of it. I I trade still because I'm good at it, and I mean I have nothing better to do. But I was starting to get sick of it, and now that I've taken like a 3-4 month vacation, I'm starting to be more motivated again, and kind of like looking forward to getting back in it. And I think if I continue doing that, I might stick around for quite a while longer. So
well, yeah, you're
that's
taking a deload from a high volume, high intensity regimen, right? It's just like modern sports periodization, I think, applies in many parts of life.
Yeah, and now like I'm actually looking forward to it again, and that is a nice change of pace, because then like it's actually fun again, and then yeah, that's how I want to live my life. I want to have fun with the things I do, not necessarily be like miserable, even if I'm winning, you know. And I think a lot of people,
oh for sure,
kind of get stuck in that. So
I think in general, it's like really good to have a switch, right? Like if you're gonna go hard on the trading stuff and allocate a lot of your energy, bandwidth, attention, which necessarily comes with trade-offs as far as your sleep and spending time with loved ones and your hobbies, other endeavors. You might as well like pick your spots, go hard for whatever number of months you have an edge and where it's most relevant, and then the other times just actually learn to switch off, rest, reset, sort of resensitize to the market, and then come back when it's appropriate. I feel like a lot of people get trapped in this sort of middle ground where, you know, they're focused enough to detract from other parts of their life, but there isn't enough going on in the market or in terms of the edges to really make it worth it. So they're just like in this very dull fashion, accumulating a lot of burnout and fatigue without the returns to show for it. So by the time it gets really hot, they're already kind of burnt out, and then when it's time to relax, they really can't, because they're just used to always being present. And I think that part is massively overrated, and people get that balance wrong.
Yeah. But to answer your original question, I think like I just from looking at what I still have to do, like I literally had to sit down and do a to-do list, which I haven't done in a long time. And to-do list never ended, as in like it's just like more than 100 items deep, where I'm like, fuck my life. And I kind of get through 1 or 2 items every day. I think that's going to be like another 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then maybe end of February or like middle of March, probably middle of March-ish, I might actually come back to the market, see if I can find something. And then obviously, like if my tradecation ends and the market is at a shit point, like, I mean, what am I going to do, right? Like, I'm not going to force anything. So
and then knowing your timing, you'll come back, nail a short, and then we'll all just be upset that you came back.
No, I really don't think I'm gonna short again. Like I'm out of the shorting game. If anything, I'll wait for the pullback to be done and then buy again.
Well, then
and that could be higher than right now. Yeah, and that could be higher than right now. Like I could see the market be like in 2 months be higher than right now, even if it pulls back.
Could well be, mate. I'm really interested in how this 2,500. I mean, it's an interesting idea to follow, right? Like the argument is basically ETHBTC is in some form at a local extreme, and it could get dragged higher by a pending ETHUSD breakout above 2,500 because there's a lot of space until the next resistance. I think that's a very interesting theme to follow, especially with BTC kind of leading the way. You know, it's the ghost of the eternal rotation, Don. Like surely at some point, right, guys? Right? And then it's like, nope. We'll see how that plays out. I think again, if you're going to make an argument for it, then at least like your trendline / ETF combo was a valid argument, even amidst a really shitty looking ETH, and that worked, or at least worked in ETHBTC terms, which means 1 green week. And this is like the second one that's at least, I think the way you phrased it was, you know, I wouldn't call you a retard type of grade, and I think this applies to ETH in its current form as well. On the altcoin front, I mean, Bonk is up, and the Bonk P&L guy is tweeting again. So I don't know if that's a useful indicator in any sense, but that's going on. I've got Velo open looking at the large caps, and you're pretty much right. Out of the large caps, there's a thing called KAS, K-A-S, that's up 32%. It's a bit of an outlier. Otherwise, it's HBAR, Atom, and then BTC. So I still think that distribution is pretty fucking BTC dominant, right? Like if in the large caps, BTC is like top 3, top 4, that's a pretty BTC driven rally. There isn't actually a lot of froth in alts either, just looking at funding rates across the board, even the places where the froth tends to come up first, like Bybit and OKX, there's really not a lot of craziness going on. And it just seems more BTC driven, sort of ETF inflow, technical breakout, etc. And doesn't seem super frothy or dispersed at the moment, which is quite good, right? And on the futures side, I mean, quarterlies are at like 10%, which is fine actually. Sort of following the price more or less. No crazy divergence there. I haven't looked at altcoin dominance or anything like that, but given that most of the perp funding rates are a baseline, I'm going to assume there isn't a ton of froth going on there either. Are there any altcoin themes you're even remotely interested in or tracking? I think a lot of the stuff has been sort of on-chain, meme coiny, big launches and airdrops. So I think there is a lot of action going on in the altcoin space. It's just, again, one of those periods where it's less visible on centralized exchanges, right? It's like on-chain meme coins plus airdrops just won't show up as readily, if you will, as kind of large caps moving. So that seems to be the meta at the moment. Have you noticed anything else?
Yes, I've seen a bunch of people basically shill like tiny caps and like these kind of like
another Friday.
yeah, but it's been a lot where people are just like in the trenches doing like trading literal garbage,
right?
And that's been doing quite well. But other than that, I think it's been quite muted, which is I think quite good, right?
Yeah,
like if I had to make a best case like a week or two or 3 ago or whatever, whenever the ETF was, Jesus Christ, time flies. Like before the ETF, like let's say a month or 2 ago, right?
It's been 3 years, Don. Wake up.
Then like my best case would have been, and I'm pretty sure like I talked about the first part, which is Bitcoin going sideways, which it did. And then the second one is altcoins not doing so well on the subsequent breakout, right? Like that's a really nice combo. That's like there's not really that much froth. There's just a continued kind of buying pressure on this thing that drowns out the selling. Like doesn't get much better than that. Just from like a face value kind of perspective. Now watch this be the top, but I don't know. Like it just looks quite good to me on all fronts.
Of course.
Yeah, respectfully, altcoins doing poorly or like not being able to kind of keep up with the relentless buying pressure on Bitcoin. That's just good. Bitcoin not going down in the face of bad news, bad flows, whatever. That's just
both.
Good.
Yeah.
The chart looking like it does. I mean, that's just good. I don't think there's much to complain about, really.
Yeah, and it's nice. I think you made a really good point that these big breakouts automatically give you invalidations that are reasonably close to price.
Yeah.
And that's always a good thing, where if you can sort of limit the empty space and have clearer guidelines for what qualifies as, sort of lines in the sand or inflection points for bias, that's always really helpful. And there are a lot of trading systems that will just look at these larger return type candles and use them as validation for entries or invalidation for long ideas. And I think that's a really good one. Sort of this weekly open, I think you mentioned, is probably, at least from a short to medium term, like a really good level to have, basically. I don't have any other altcoin wisdom, not that I have any in the first place. I think you can see from the large caps that it's fairly muted, from funding rates that it's fairly muted. Whatever altcoin activity there is, I think the majority is towards focused around a few specific ecosystems and the airdrops therein, and that's cool, as well as the meme coin stuff, but it's not really centralized exchange, large to mid cap moon season, and that's not a terrible thing when you're looking at a weekly breakout like this on BTC. I know we're slightly pressed for time given you have like a life and stuff done, so we'll coast through these two articles, and they're kind of topics we've touched on before. The first is Eigenlayer hits nearly 6 billion TVL as its uncapped deposits window draws to a close. I've got a broader question here. I mean, we sort of talked about what the implications might be for ETH and from a price perspective. I want to ask a broader one. That do you think that this staking type of meta, which is rehypothecation under another name, do you think we'll pay for that down the line? Does this seem like a dodgy, collateral, not as liquid as you think, crash catalyst in the future, Ponzi type thing at face value without looking super closely at it? And again, I use Ponzi, not calling this a Ponzi scheme. To be very clear, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying in terms of market impact, we've seen that when you have less than pristine collateral and an assumption of liquidity for derivative type products that eventually doesn't track the underlying so well or isn't as liquid as you think, that has pretty important ramifications for credit markets when things get a bit crunchy. Do you think these types of TVLs and these types of protocols in general have that type of long tail systemic risk, or is this just good tech and I'm being retarded?
No, I think they do have some sort of risk. I mean, we had the same with ETH staking, right? Where like at some point it was actually like cheaper than ETH, if I remember correctly, like staked ETH, like for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So like I always think there's a risk there. I don't think it's necessarily systemic. I think it's just in general, like you lock your shit up, prices go poor, like go like prices move poorly, and then you're kind of stuck in something, and you might have to buy, like sell cheaper than you would like, and even cheaper than the market technically, or cheaper than it's actually technically worth. I don't think it's necessarily systemic. I think at this point, and this could be the biggest chinks of my life, but I think at this point we're kind of a little bit beyond that.
You're using racial epithets.
What do you mean?
Nothing, don't worry.
It goes beyond me. Anyway, I think we're a little bit.
Oh, you said jinx. Oh my god, I'm giving myself away there.
Yes, I mean,
I thought that phrase started with CH.
Oh, Jesus Christ, dude.
I thought you were saying this could be the biggest chinks of my life. I'm like, what are you talking about?
No, but
oh dear, sorry. And you obviously would have meant chinks in the armor, right? Not the racial whatever. You know what? Fuck it. We'll keep it in. Keep going.
Yes. No, I think
I love China. China's great. Sorry, continue.
I think we're beyond the systemic risks of those kind of things.
Okay. So respectfully, there's no systemic risk.
Respectfully, I think there's risk, and quite obviously so. But I don't think it's okay. This market goes to zero now. Kind of risk.
Yeah, I mean, we've been through that.
Yes.
Oh my god! I can't believe I just thought you said chinks instead of jinx. We should probably keep it in, but like, I'm sorry, I guess.
Yeah.
Who do I even apologize to? Whatever. It's just my hearing's bad. I'm old. I'm 27 now. I grew up on crypto Twitter. Isn't that terrifying? I spent 7 years on crypto Twitter, and I'm 27. That's not good. Yeah, there are things that the best medicine can't fix.
I mean, it's not much better than for me either.
That's true. But my times, the ages I spent on crypto Twitter were surely more formative for my brain.
Fair enough.
Or whatever's left of it, anyway. The other one is new spot Bitcoin ETFs amassed 200,000 BTC in less than 1 month of trading.
It's insane.
That's massive.
Yeah.
I don't really know what else to say. That's just big, and it's really good, and it's outperforming all expectations from a volume point of view and just from an inflows point of view. And I think, and I was part of this argument, I don't know to what extent you agreed, my assumption was this would kind of pass the initial interest bump, would take a while for the numbers to get pretty big and interesting as people work on compliance and educating their clients and so on and so forth. But these are pretty fucking fast numbers, big and fast. I didn't think we'd get both at the same time, and this is just good.
Yeah. I mean, we will kind of ignore the fact that this is not necessarily just on the fundamental side of things, that how you should have your Bitcoin, right? The whole point is a little bit of a different one, at least to me.
Yes.
But just from a price perspective, that's insane, and I think it's only gonna get worse or better in the way that this is gonna. This situation is going to get bigger and bigger. They're going to have more and more of the Bitcoin. And then at some point, it's going to look like you have MicroStrategy owning a certain percentage, and you have the ETF owning a certain percentage, and then you have Satoshi earning having a certain percentage, and that's it.
And then Coinbase, the main custodian, gets hacked, and we have a black swan.
Yep. It's not great on that front, respectfully, but it is great for price, and that is all we care about anyway.
Oh, speak for yourself. I'm an ideological Rothbardian at my core, Don.
Yes, always have.
Always have been. Dude, I went through that during uni. I think we all go through a so-called intellectual libertarian phase, where all I did was just read Hayek, fucking Rothbard, Mises, Nozick, and I was just.
I don't think this is gonna be the experience anyone.
Okay, maybe just me, but I think at least maybe it's in America it's more common. Do people not read books and shit? I don't know, man. Whatever.
I think we're all going through, and then you just say the most outlandish shit on the planet.
Listen, for my fellow not my fellow, because I'm ostracized and excommunicated, but for my Rothbardians, Hayekians, Nozickians, and all these people, if you went through an edgy intellectual libertarian phase around your late teens, early 20s, please leave a comment. It couldn't have just couldn't have been just me. But then I sort of grew out of it, but I guess some people don't. I actually started reading books from other schools of thought, and I was like, these are good arguments. Maybe I shouldn't keep reading just the same thing. Crazy how that works.
I think in general that would be a good idea for most people.
Yeah, the thing that set me off first, I read Debunking Economics by Steve Keen. I thought I understood economics from reading like Thomas Sowell and Hayek and all these sort of, Mises type people. And then I read like a real economics book, and I was like, oh, I don't know anything. And that sort of set me off on a bit of a daisy chain of borrowers. That's it, Don. It's cutoff time.
I just don't know anything generally.
It's fine. You're a duck. You're a duck who buys low and sells high-ish.
That's the best description anyone's ever done.
It's a great point to end on. That's all from us. Thank you for listening to Casual Friday. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoy these. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're trying to get to 60k before BTC does. Definitely curse that one now. Woo supports the show. If you want to support them, check out the links in the description below. We'd appreciate it. That's all from us. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.